You know what's wild? The average 40-year-old American has less than $4,500 in their savings account. Not their investment account, not their retirement fund, their entire liquid savings. Meanwhile, that same person has probably earned somewhere around $1.2 million in total income over their career so far. So where did all that money go? Here's the part nobody wants to admit. It wasn't stolen. It wasn't lost to some economic crisis. It evaporated through a series of seemingly reasonable decisions that felt perfectly logical at the time, but compounded into financial quicksand. My name is Mike, and I've spent years studying why intelligent people make catastrophic financial decisions in their 20s and 30s that haunt them for decades. If you're wondering why you're not where you thought you'd be financially by now, or you want to avoid the mistakes that keep people broke well into middle age, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Here's something that should terrify you. According to recent studies, 64% of Americans couldn't cover a $1,000 emergency without going into debt. But here's where it gets really disturbing. That statistic doesn't just apply to minimum wage workers or people in their early 20s. It includes 35-year-olds with college degrees. It includes 38-year-olds making $85,000 per year. It includes people who look successful on the outside, but are completely falling apart financially behind closed doors. The question isn't why are poor people broke? That's obvious. The real question is why are people with decent incomes still broke at 40? Let's start with the biggest lie that derails people's finances before they even get started. I call it the timeline illusion. You graduate college at 22, maybe 23. You get your first real job making, let's say, $45,000. You tell yourself this is just the starting point. In a few years, you'll be making more money, and then you'll start getting serious about saving and investing. But here's what actually happens. You're 25 now, making $55,000. But your rent went up. You finally have decent furniture instead of that hand-me-down couch from college. You're spending more on going out because you can finally afford it. You tell yourself you'll get serious about money next year. Now you're 28, making $70,000. Sounds like progress, right? Except now you're engaged. There's a wedding to plan. Everyone says you should spend 2 months' salary on an engagement ring, so there goes $11,000. The wedding itself costs $35,000 because apparently that's just what weddings cost now. You tell yourself you'll recover financially after the wedding. You're 31 now. The wedding debt is paid off, but now you need a bigger apartment or maybe even a house because everyone your age is buying houses. Your car that got you through your 20s is falling apart. You need something reliable, something nice. That $580 monthly car payment seems manageable. Suddenly you're 35 and you've barely started investing. You have maybe $15,000 in your retirement account. Your friends who started investing at 25 with way less income somehow have $150,000 saved. How did that happen? The answer is brutal. They understood something you didn't. The money you make in your 20s isn't worth less just because the numbers are smaller. A dollar invested at 25 is worth more than $5 invested at 40 because of compound growth. Let me show you the math that will either motivate you or absolutely crush you. Two people, both planning to retire at 65. Person A starts investing $300 per month at age 25. Person B waits until 35 and invests $600 per month, literally double the amount. Both earn 8% annually. At retirement, Person A has accumulated roughly $1,050,000. Person B, who invested twice as much every single month, ends up with only $660,000. The person who started earlier with less money retired with nearly $400,000 more than the person who waited 10 years despite investing half as much monthly. That's not a strategy. That's not luck. That's just math. Cold, unforgiving, compound interest math. But starting late isn't even the biggest mistake people make in their 20s and 30s. The real wealth killer is something psychologists call present bias. And it's the reason luxury apartments are full of people who can't afford groceries. Present bias is your brain's tendency to value immediate rewards over future benefits, even when the future benefits are objectively more valuable. It's why you'll spend $200 on concert tickets today, but can't imagine investing that same $200 for your future self. Your 25-year-old brain sees your 65-year-old self as basically a stranger. Why would you sacrifice for some old person you don't even know yet? Here's where this gets really destructive. Every single financial decision you make in your 20s and 30s is filtered through this bias. Should you buy the $40,000 car or the $18,000 car? The expensive one makes you happy right now. Should you rent the trendy downtown loft for $2,200 or the basic apartment 15 minutes away for $1,400? The expensive one improves your life today. Individually, none of these decisions feels catastrophic, but they compound. That extra $800 in rent every month for 10 years is $96,000. Invested at 8%, that becomes $175,000 by the time you're 40. You didn't just spend $96,000 on nicer housing. You spent $175,000 in future wealth. You traded your financial freedom in your 40s for a shorter commute in your 20s. Now let's talk about something that absolutely destroys people's wealth in their 30s. I call it the success tax. And almost nobody sees it coming until it's too late. Here's how it works. You spent your 20s struggling, living with roommates, driving a beat-up car, wearing the same 3 outfits to work. You told yourself this was temporary. Once you started making real money, life would get better. Then it happens. You get promoted. You're making $90,000 instead of $60,000. That's $30,000 more per year. Your brain immediately starts calculating what you can now afford. You can finally get your own place. You can finally buy a decent car. You deserve this, right? You earned it. Within 6 months of your raise, your expenses have increased by $2,500 per month. New apartment, new car payment, new wardrobe, better restaurants, nicer vacations. You're spending an extra $30,000 annually. You're not saving any more money than before. Your lifestyle just got more expensive. This is the success tax. Every dollar you earn above your previous income gets immediately absorbed by lifestyle inflation. And the cruel irony is that this happens most aggressively to people who spent their 20s living frugally. They feel like they've been depriving themselves for years, so when money finally shows up, they unleash all that pent-up desire to live better. I've watched people go from $50,000 to $120,000 in income over 5 years and somehow end up with less money saved at the end. How is that possible? Because their $2,000 monthly expenses became $7,000 monthly expenses. Here's what wealthy people understand that broke people don't. Your spending should grow much slower than your income. If your income doubles, your spending should increase maybe 30%. The rest goes to investments. But most people do the opposite. Income goes up 50%, spending goes up 70%, and they fund the difference with debt. Speaking of debt, let's discuss the single biggest mistake I see people make in their 30s. Taking on what I call productive debt for unproductive purposes. There's this narrative floating around that debt is a tool. Leverage is how the wealthy build wealth. All of this is technically true, but there's a massive difference between productive debt and destructive debt that most people completely miss. Productive debt generates more income than it costs. A business loan that lets you launch a company generating $100,000 in annual profit is productive. A mortgage at 4% when you're investing the difference at 10% could be productive. But here's what people actually do. They take out a $35,000 car loan at 7% because their income went up and they deserve a nicer vehicle. That's not productive debt. That's just expensive transportation with interest. They finance $15,000 worth of furniture because 0% interest sounds like free money. Except it's not 0% if you miss a payment, and now you're paying 24% on a couch. The average American in their 30s is carrying $40,000 in non-mortgage debt. Car loans, credit cards, personal loans, student loans. And they're paying an average of $850 per month just in debt payments. That's $10,200 per year. Over 10 years, that's $102,000 in payments, not counting the interest, which is probably another $30,000. Do you understand what this means? The average person in their 30s is spending $130,000 over a decade just to service debt, not to buy anything new. just to pay for things they already bought in the past. If that money had been invested instead, it would be worth over $200,000 by the time they hit 40. This is why people stay broke. Not because they don't earn enough. Because they're trapped in a cycle of paying for their past while their future gets sacrificed. But here's something even more insidious that keeps people broke into their 40s. The upgrade trap. The upgrade trap works like this. You buy a house for $300,000 at age 30. 5 years later, it's worth $380,000. You've built $80,000 in equity plus whatever you've paid down on the mortgage. This feels like wealth. Then someone tells you that you're sitting on all this equity and not using it. You could upgrade to a $500,000 house. Your mortgage payment would only increase by $600 per month. You can afford that, right? Plus, the new house will appreciate even more. So you do it. You sell your $380,000 house, take your equity, buy the $500,000 house. Your payment goes from $1,600 to $2,200. But the new house is so much nicer. Better neighborhood. Better schools for kids you might have someday. Except here's what really happened. You just reset your mortgage clock back to 30 years. You're back at the beginning of an amortization schedule where most of your payment goes to interest. Your $80,000 in equity got absorbed into the new down payment. You're paying an extra $7,200 per year. And you're no closer to owning your home outright than you were 5 years ago. The upgrade trap convinces you that moving to progressively more expensive houses is building wealth. But real wealth is owning your home outright. The person who buys a modest house at 30 and pays it off by 45 is infinitely wealthier than the person who upgrades every 5 years and still has 20 years of payments left at 50. Now let's talk about the thing that might make you the most uncomfortable. The comparison economy. 20 years ago, you had no idea what your college roommate was doing financially. Now, you wake up and see that someone from high school just bought a lake house. You scroll and see your coworker posting pictures from their 3rd vacation this year. You watch stories of people your age driving luxury cars, wearing designer clothes, eating at restaurants you can't afford. Your brain doesn't process this as curated highlight reels. It processes it as evidence that you're falling behind. So you respond the only way that makes sense to your anxious brain. You spend money to keep up. You book a vacation you can't afford. You lease a luxury car. You move to an expensive neighborhood. Suddenly you're spending $3,000 more per month than you were 2 years ago. Not because your life actually improved. Because your perception of normal got completely warped by social media. Here's the reality that nobody posts about. Most of those people are broke too. They're financing their lifestyles with debt. They look successful while drowning privately. But you don't see that part. The comparison economy has convinced an entire generation that looking wealthy is more important than being wealthy. And that belief system keeps people broke until their 40s, 50s, and beyond. Let me share something that might completely shift your perspective. The average millionaire reaches that milestone at age 49. Not 30, not 35, not even 40. Age 49. You know what that means. If you're 32 and feeling behind, you're not behind. You're exactly on schedule as long as you start making better decisions now. If you're 38 and just getting serious about money, you still have time to build significant wealth before 50. But here's the catch. You have to actually change your behavior. And that's where most people fail. They read articles about building wealth. They watch videos about financial independence. They understand the concepts intellectually, but they don't change anything. Knowledge without action is just expensive entertainment. Let me break down exactly what keeps people broke until their 40s in order of financial damage. Number 1, financing lifestyle with debt. Every dollar you pay in interest is a dollar that will never compound for your future. The average American pays over $8,000 per year in credit card and loan interest alone. Over 20 years in your 20s and 30s, that's $160,000 in interest payments. Invested at 8%, that would become over $400,000 by your 40s. Number 2, housing inflation. Spending 35% to 45% of your income on housing instead of 25% to 30%. That extra 10% to 15% over 15 years, could easily be $150,000 that never got invested. Number 3. Transportation costs. Financing new or luxury vehicles instead of buying reliable used cars. This one alone costs people $200 to $400 per month over decades. Add it all up, and the typical person loses somewhere between $800,000 and $1.2 million in potential wealth by making standard middle-class financial decisions throughout their 20s and 30s. Here's the harsh truth that nobody wants to hear. Staying broke until your 40s isn't about bad luck or a rigged economy or not making enough money. It's about making decisions based on how you feel today instead of what you need tomorrow. The person who drives a 10-year-old paid-off car isn't driving it because they can't afford better. They're driving it because they understand that a car is transportation, not an identity. The person living in a modest apartment when they could afford a luxury condo understands that rent is money you'll never see again. So what's the actual solution? It comes down to 3 decisions that will determine your entire financial trajectory. Decision 1. Live like you make 30% less than you actually make. If you earn $70,000, live like you make $50,000. That gap between your income and your spending is where wealth gets built. Decision 2. Eliminate all consumer debt and never take it on again. Cars, credit cards, personal loans, furniture financing, all of it. If you can't buy it with money you already have, you can't afford it yet. Decision 3. Invest a minimum of 15% of your gross income starting immediately. Not next year. Not after you get a raise. Now, if you're making $60,000, that's $750 per month. These 3 decisions will either make you wealthy by your 40s, or they won't happen and you'll stay broke. There's no middle ground. The formula is painfully simple. Earn more than you spend, invest the difference consistently, and don't touch it for decades. But nobody stays broke until their 40s because they don't understand this formula. They stay broke because following it requires sacrificing what feels good today for what will matter tomorrow. And most people simply aren't willing to make that trade.